In the early 2000s, South London was a microcosm of urban Britain, vibrant, diverse, yet marred by deep-seated issues of poverty, disenfranchisement, and a burgeoning youth gang culture. Areas like Southwark, Peckham, and Brixton were not just neighborhoods. They were battlegrounds where young men navigated a complex web of identity, survival, and influence. The allure of street life was potent. For many, it offered a sense of belonging, respect, and power that was otherwise elusive. The proliferation of gangs, often organized around postcodes or ethnic communities, created a fractured social landscape. Within this milieu, the Woolwich Boys, a predominantly Somali gang based in southeast London, emerged as a significant force. Known for their involvement in various criminal activities, including drug trafficking and violent street crime, their influence permeated the streets, shaping the lives of many young men. While there's no direct evidence linking Yassin Elmansouri to the Woolwich Boys, the environment he inhabited was undoubtedly influenced by such groups. The pressures to conform, to gain respect, and to assert dominance were palpable. In this context, carrying a knife was not just a means of protection, it was a statement, a rite of passage, and, tragically, a precursor to violence. On November 28, 2007, outside a Tesco supermarket on the Old Kent Road, a seemingly trivial altercation escalated into a life-altering event. Yassin, accompanied by two associates, attempted to rob a 15-year-old boy, Ahmed, of his mobile phone. When Ahmed's friends intervened, the situation spiraled out of control. In a swift and brutal act, Yassin drew a 5-inch kitchen knife and stabbed 3 individuals. The most severe injury was inflicted upon Ahmed, with the blade embedding itself deep into his skull. The force was so intense that the handle broke off as Yassin attempted to withdraw the knife. Surgeons at Guy's Hospital worked tirelessly to save Ahmed's life, but the damage was profound. He would never regain the full physical capabilities he once had, and the psychological scars would linger far longer. The aftermath was a blur of sirens, police tape, and a community left in shock. Yassin fled the scene, leaving behind his hat and mobile phone, oversights that would prove pivotal in his identification and subsequent arrest. The gravity of the attack was undeniable. In court, the prosecution presented a compelling case, highlighting the premeditated nature of the stabbing and the severe injuries inflicted. Yassin's defense, citing his youth and lack of prior convictions, was insufficient to mitigate the severity of his actions. On April 13, 2012, Yassin Elmansouri was convicted of attempted murder and 2 counts of grievous bodily harm with intent. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 7 years before parole eligibility. The judge emphasized the catastrophic effect such a crime can have on a victim, underscoring the broader implications of knife crime in society. Yassin's case was not an isolated incident. It was emblematic of a troubling trend in London and across the UK during the late 2000s. Knife crime, particularly among youths, was on the rise, leading to widespread concern and public outcry. Between 2006 and 2008, the number of knife homicides in London increased dramatically. In 2007, there were 27 teenage killings, a sharp rise from 17 in 2006. The following year, 2008, saw a continuation of this trend, with numerous incidents of fatal stabbings making headlines. The victims were often young men, many of whom were involved in gangs or caught in the crossfire of territorial disputes. The media coverage of these events painted a grim picture of urban life, where young people were increasingly resorting to knives to resolve conflicts. The public debate intensified, with calls for stricter laws, increased policing, and more effective interventions to curb the tide of violence. While Yassin's story is central, it is essential to remember the victims, the individuals whose lives were irrevocably altered by his actions. Ahmed, the 15-year-old boy who bore the brunt of the attack, faced a long and arduous journey to recovery. The physical scars were evident, but the emotional and psychological toll was profound. The trauma of the incident, coupled with the stigma of being a victim of knife crime, placed immense strain on his young life. His family, too, grappled with the aftermath. The fear, the uncertainty, and the constant worry about his well-being became their new reality. They sought solace in community support, counseling, and the hope that their son could rebuild his life. The repercussions of Yassin's actions rippled through the community. Friends and family of both the victim and the perpetrator were left to reconcile their understanding of justice, loyalty, and morality. The incident sparked conversations about the root causes of youth violence, poverty, lack of opportunity, and the allure of gang culture. Community leaders, educators, and policymakers began to recognize the need for comprehensive strategies to address the issue. Initiatives focused on education, mentorship, and community engagement were introduced to steer young people away from the path of violence and crime. Yassin Elmansouri's story serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the devastating consequences of knife crime and the complex interplay of social factors that contribute to youth violence. It underscores the importance of early intervention, community support, and systemic change to prevent such tragedies. In the years following the incident, efforts to combat knife crime intensified. Schools implemented programs to educate students about the dangers of carrying weapons. Local authorities increased funding for youth services, aiming to provide alternatives to gang involvement. The media, once quick to sensationalize incidents of violence, began to focus more on stories of resilience, redemption, and community healing. While challenges remain, the collective response to incidents like Yassin's has led to a more nuanced understanding of the issue. It is no longer viewed solely through the lens of criminality, but as a complex social problem that requires a multifaceted approach. The Old Kent Road, once a symbol of urban decay and violence, has undergone a transformation. New businesses, community centers, and green spaces have revitalized the area. The scars of the past remain, but they serve as reminders of the resilience and strength of the community. Residents, once divided by fear and distrust, now work together to create a safer, more inclusive environment for future generations. The lessons learned from tragedies like the one involving Yassin Elmansouri have paved the way for a more compassionate and proactive approach to addressing youth violence. In the end, the story is not just about one young man's descent into violence, but about a community's collective effort to heal, rebuild, and ensure that such a tragedy is never repeated.